good afternoon, good evening. And again, welcome to BWTM Sports Gaming. Glad you could join us. Before I begin, just a reminder of what this channel is. Uh, Historically, we've done a lot of interviews with a lot of big names. Um, I think my style of interviewing has always been evergreen, so you can always go back and listen to an interview regardless of the date and the time or what's happening. There's some really interesting interviews on the channel. If you're into your boxing, interviews of Evander Holyfield, Ray Mercer, George Foreman III, Tyson Fury, some really great interviews there with Tyson Fury, Keith Thurman, Terence Crawford, Boots Ennis, Alexander Usyk. The list goes on and on. A lot of these interviews happened before these guys became champions, not when they became undisputed, like before they became champions. So I could see the talent that these fighters had long before many did, and a lot of the times where these fighters were being kind of looked down upon, oh, they're not good enough, what can this person do? We've gone on and see people become world champions, and it's a great feeling. And it's a great feeling knowing that you've built relationships with these fighters. Um, Interviews with top trainers from around the world. So yeah, even one interview, in fact, one of my favorite interviews is my interview with Muhammad Ali's brother. Yep, he rang my house at the time saying, I want you to do an interview with us. And it was, I learnt so much about the great man Muhammad Ali, learnt about his mentality. His brother was his chief sparring partner, so I learnt a lot from that. So when you get a chance, check out the interview with Muhammad Ali's brother. Anyway, let us move on. I am a professional cricket coach. I've been coaching 25 years. I have an academy now in Africa, in Nigeria, and you'll see stuff on that as well. And I love to do my gaming. I love to do a bit of football. I love my football management. So much so, I haven't even got time to really get around and play Undisputed, which is a game that I should be playing a lot, but I haven't had a chance to. But anyway, that aside, that's what you can get on the channel, and you'll get a few more surprises on the channel coming soon as we look to do some great things moving forward in 2025. That being said and out of the way, let's get into tonight's conversation. Tonight's conversation is about handlers, and for a lot of you, may not know what a handler is in this sense. I'm not talking about the Hollywood sense. I'm just talking about boxing sense. A handler is a person that basically comes in and their role is to protect the investment of the manager, the promoter, right? So their role is specifically to look after the fighter. If the fighter decides to go to the toilet, the handler is outside the toilet door, right? If the fighter decides to go out shopping, the handler is right next to. Basically, the handler is the shadow of the fighter, and the purpose of the handler is not to get involved in the fighter's business. The purpose of the handler is to ensure that the fighter is safe, one, two, protected, because it's the investment of the promoter or the investment of the manager, right? So that was to ensure that the fighter didn't come in overweight, or the fighter didn't come in injured, or the fighter didn't get caught up in anything that would be unscrupulous, or would make the fighter look bad, i.e., so things that would affect the fighter's sponsorship, things that they, would give the fighter a bad image. The handler would be there to avoid such things. The handler will always be there, also be there to avoid the fighter being attached to certain types of individuals, unscrupulous individuals, or crowds, gangs of people. People, well wishers are fine, but there's a time and place for well wishers. Well wishers would not be, for example, turning up uh, the night of a fight to have a party. So that would not be happening under the law of the handler. The handler is to make sure that you are handled with care, much like the postman with or DHL. Although they haven't handled my delivery very well, The general idea is that they handle a package with care to ensure that the item gets from one location to the other location without any damage being done. If anything, they add interest. Yeah, literally. So how did I come to know about this thing about the handler? Well, there's two stories. First of all, I always knew about Don King, and Don King always used to have handlers, and I knew this because I used to talk a lot to Stacey McKinley, former trainer of Mike Tyson. So, and Stacey will be back on the channel at some point soon. So the fact that he would tell me stories of how he had, like Don King would have handlers, and I saw this firsthand myself. I used to box years ago, and I had the opportunity. I had the beautiful opportunity to go to America. At one point, I went to Roy Jones's gym. I was in Pensacola, Florida, but I was based out in Miami. And in the gym in Miami, yeah, I was there for a short time. When I was in that gym, one day I was in the gym, was finished, just coming to finish up sparring, and I think I must have been about a minute and a half left with 3 rounds. I got into a minute and a half in the first round of sparring, and then I heard a voice say, "King's here, King's here." I think I might have told you some of this story before. King's here, and I didn't get what they meant by king. I just saw the gym, just fighters, just packing up their stuff really, really quickly. And the train said, "Right," he used to call me London. So he went, "London, stop." Stopped. And Randall Bailey was in this gym as well, by the way. Randall Bailey, champion of the world. Big punching Randall Bailey. I think he's welterweight, light welterweight Randall Bailey. Top fighter, top fighter. They don't make fighters like Randall Bailey anymore. Anyway, everyone's rushing around this gym, rushing around the gym. And then as we come out, I was about to come out the gym, there's a limousine outside. There's 2 limousines outside with the American flags on the top of them. And well, who came out of that limousine? It was Don King. And Don King came. And do you know why Don King came to the gym? To check on his investments. His investments being the fighters. To know if they were on weight, to make sure that they were training, to make sure they were at the gym, to make sure there was no late nights. Don King came to check on his fighters because his fighters was his investments. Yeah. So that's why he was at the gym. Years ago, I was in Cardiff, Wales, and I was preparing to get a professional contract with one Ronnie Rush. You might not know who Ronnie Rush is. Ronnie Rush trained Steve Robinson, who was the featherweight champion of the world. He also trained Barry Jones, who's the WBO. I think he might have been featherweight champion as well. Barry Jones, yeah, featherweight champion. Barry Jones, my old gym mate there. And at the time I was in the gym, I'll tell you around the time I was in the gym, Barry Jones was defending his, going to fight against Acelino de Freitas. At that time, Acelino de Freitas was unbeaten. And he was a huge punch. He was like, I think it's 32-0 with 32 knockouts, something like that. Acelino de Freitas, huge puncher. And Barry was given the go ahead because of they said some question. He was out of the ring for a while, and they were questioning the fact that he could box again because he had a. They were saying there was a tumor on the brain, so that's why he didn't box. But basically, he came back in the end, and he was getting this opportunity to train. But anyway, to cut a long story short, let me tell you a story about Ronnie Rush, my trainer. Ronnie Rush. I lived with Ronnie Rush. Everything was really a bad time, to be honest, bad timing. Ronnie Rush is when I arrived into Wales, Cardiff. The night I arrived, his wife had passed away, and Ronnie loved his wife dearly. And an older man, Ronnie, from the island of Trinidad and Tobago, so there was a family connection there, and that's why I was sent over there. Yeah. Actually, the person that sent me over there was one of my trainers back in the time. Was called Reefer. He had a son called Mark Reefer, who was a professional boxer. But Reefer, if you know your boxing, Reefer was a very good trainer, excellent trainer. Reefer was the guy that introduced me to guys like Archie Moore and Sugar Ray Robinson. So he introduced me to those sort of fighters, and obviously Sugar Ray ended up being my favorite fighter. Long story short, when I was running, Ronnie would, when I was at the house, if I was in my room, Ronnie would come up in my room and knock on my door. When I ate food, Ronnie sat next to me eating food. Ronnie did, he was everywhere. He would watch the clock and watch the time, what time I'd go to bed. He's like, listen, you got your run at 4 a.m. in the morning, but you think you should be going to bed, sir. It was like that. So if you remember the times of Mike Tyson and Customado, it was like that. Really, literally, your trainer was everywhere. He just did everything. Cooked your meals. He did everything. That's how it was for me. Literally like a handler. Yeah. Then I wanted my own space. I wanted my own place. So guess what? My tray would pull up outside my door to ensure at 4 o'clock in the morning I was ready to go for my runs. Yes. So imagine this. Okay, say five o'clock in the morning. Good evening to you. Sure. 5 o'clock in the morning. This old man from Trinidad is in his car, and you're running through the valleys in Cardiff, and he has got at 5 o'clock in the morning. He's beeping his horn, and the bump of his car is touching the back of your ankle. Of course, you can't run a car, and he's pushing. He's calling you. He's insulting you. To I don't know. He's just insulting you. He insulted me, and he said, "Run up that hill, run up that hill." So ran up the hill, and the road's going round and round and round and round the top of the hill. He said, "Now come back down, you bastard." My God, I was just wanted to prove him wrong. And as I'm coming down the hill now, so I have no oxygen. My legs are completely gone. He said, "Come on down." And that is how, and I'd come back down, and then I'd get in the car, he'd take me back to the house, he'd have breakfast, and I have to go off to work. But at that time, we had to change that, stop working, and then I had to be in the gym. I had a sponsor to be in the gym. So I finished that run, 5:30 in the morning, sleep, back in the gym at around 12, and did 12. It was cardio and fitness, right? Pad work, fitness and pad work. I tell you how bad it was. At one point, I was in the gym, and I remember him, Johnny was saying to me, "Hit me as hard as you can, come on." And he'd make me hit him really hard to his body, his stomach. And what this guy would do, what he would do is, it was a trick, he would just, as I was going to punch him, he'd take the air that was inside his stomach and blow it out. So he didn't feel anything. It was incredible the way he did it. I used to say to me, "What goes up must come down." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "Look, say he said, follow me against the ropes." So I was following me against the ropes. And he went, "Look, come down." And as I came down, he hit me. He was showing me how you get hit with someone with an uppercut. So he dipped, and as I dipped, he threw the uppercut to bring me back up. It was very interesting. It was a great trainer, Ronnie Rush. Really great trainer. Miserable, but he was everywhere. He was every freaking where, to the point that when I was working, my man is rolling up in the bar watching me. At that time, I was a bartender, rolling up and watching me on the bar. My man has got his car outside the bar. As I reach this bar, Ronnie's outside. Uh, Incredible. I could not move any which way because of this man. As it says, you're here to train. You ain't here for girls. You're here to go to the club. You ain't here for a holiday. You are here to train. So I end up getting something called chronic fatigue syndrome. So that basically cut out any sort of aspiration to do any more boxing. So that was basically the enemy for that. But I enjoyed the journey. But I learned a lot about sport. I learned a hell of a lot about the sport. And in this era now, which is the wildest era, it's like a, it wasn't the bonanza. What's the road? It's the Wild West. Boxing has become the Wild West, right? I predicted 5 years ago we were going to go down the routes of WWE. We are now in WWE. The fact that Turkey Al Sheikh would even call out Moses Atama to go and fight Alexander Usyk next is ridiculous. Ridiculous, right? We are in the Wild Wild West where people think they can have pre-fight parties or celebrations before they go and box. Our handler would stop that crap. Handler would stop that crap. Or handler would go back to his investors and say, hey, this boss, this is what happened today. Blah, 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 blah happened. And listen, as soon as that call is made to the boss, what the hell is going on here? And all hell will break loose. You think that what happened the other day with Dubois, not even that, I use that as an example. Trainer and father? No. Handler gets involved with that stuff because they want the best. The manager or the promoter or the investor wants to get the best on their returns. So this nonsense or fighters coming in overweight, fighters swearing and just being completely like doing nonsensical things. The handler is there to make sure the fighter conducts themselves in the most professional way possible. Now, this situation here with Dubois, I'm not going to go into too much about it because I think a lot of people have got had their say in it, and that's not really for me to get into. However, I will say this much. Any sponsors watching that situation there are going to be very reluctant to get involved. Very reluctant because it's all coming out in the wash now. Unprofessionalism, small mindedness, all that stuff, that is going to be, and none of the people that are celebrating or were celebrating can recoup the damage that is being currently done at the moment. It can't. Like you're damaging a brand, what you're doing, you damage it. All the good work you've done or doing is unraveling at the worst time. Where you've got someone like Turkey Asha, it's got so much money. I mean, you can afford to probably do that. Like you think, you know what? I got 75 million in the bank. What the hell? But you know, for other fighters out there, I would suggest, or promoters, managers, I would suggest get yourself a handler, and that handler has to know about boxing. They have to know about boxing and the mentality of how a boxer should be. Because a handler can go back and say, you know what, you're wasting time with this guy. You can cut contract short. You're wasting time with this guy. This guy is not dedicated to the sport. This guy is not going to come in shape. This guy is partying, he's drinking, he's smoking, all that sort of stuff. You cut the contract of these guys short, and you can give a guy who's really dedicated to the sport more of a chance. But yeah, I just think that handlers are needed in the sport of boxing. Absolutely. Shook says some guys need a team that's 20 man deep that keeps tabs on them, controls the diet, where they go, and give them stipends on how much they make every week. It worked for Tyson until he broke loose. Yeah, that's the system that was in place from Customala to Jim Jacobs. Once those two died, then Bill Cate and Tyson went off. Good afternoon, Denise. Chuck says the only thing missing from that partying down here was knee high shorts, Hawaiian top, the fedora hat, the dress shoes with no socks. Sheesh, he was out there chilling hard, late to his own main event. Yeah, but I don't think you got a choice. I don't think he's got a choice in the matter. I would question myself if Dubois even wants to box. That's the first thing I'll question if he wants to box. The second thing, which I still can't understand, is you know when you don't feel validated, when you feel that you need to prove a point or you're not good enough, and you always want validation from your family member, you're not good enough. You always look to them because you think that eventually they're going to accept you. Acceptance. You're looking at the ring to the person you want acceptance from. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Is this the way it should go? Is this the way it should be? I'm breaking this down as a coach for just 1 second. How much of Daniel Dubois' brain is locked into what his father thinks, and then how much of his brain is locked into what the trainer wants and requires, and how much is he locked into and invested in that training? Because if Dubois' mind is more invested in what the father has to say as opposed to what the trainer has to say, then that's a divided and distracted individual. And it just makes me think that's not the trainer's fault. It just makes me think the trainer has double the amount of work to do because they've got to put things in place to deal with those challenges, and they are challenges. That is why, I mean, think about this way. I'm thinking at this from my perspective as a coach. I'm imagining I'm coaching my talented cricketer, for example. I'm teaching him all the things we spent weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks working at a game plan, work it again. And the game plan may be in this situation. I want you to play defensive for this game. Or I don't want you to just play defensive. And the only ball you're going to hit is this type of ball and this type of ball. Otherwise, you're going to block everything out. Everything else you're going to block. We're restricting yourself to two shots only, right? We've spent weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks working on that, right? And then, lo and behold, dad pops up. And dad says to the boy, you now have to go out there and attack and hit every ball you can. We spent weeks and weeks and weeks working to a game plan. And the dad comes along now and starts saying something completely contrary to what I've said. And dad's voice overrides what I've had to say. What's the point? So you're basically, the analogy is basically you are walking up an escalator going down. I think Dubois' dad should be his trainer. Honestly. Because if that would stop Dubois looking out the ring, and then the focus would be on his dad. And then maybe his dad would understand the challenges that a trainer has to go through. Because I know there is no way, and I've seen it, where parents like to intervene on a player's career, and it's like a no-no. It becomes counterproductive because there's one voice, which is the dad's voice, and there's one voice, which is the coach's voice. So what we do in training, we tell parents, drop your child off and get lost. And we'll see you again after training. So we don't have the interaction with parents standing over like second coaches and feeling they're coaches. You wouldn't. This is the thing about sport, which I find highly annoying. You might see something on television, you might be a fan of something, but people go to college, university, spend years understanding the game, how to get the best out of a player, and then you, the parent, comes along and feels because you've watched a couple of fights, you think, oh yeah, I know what to say, I know what to do here. You've not been in the ring yourself, or in the ring yourself, the pressures it takes, the training week in, week out. You kind of have no value for that. And the idea of just switching trainers in and out, that's not good. That's not good. That'll bring confusion. And not only bring confusion, physically, mentally, emotionally, it's confusion. Because you invested in one person for a while, then you've got to reset again. And if it is that Daniel's autistic, then there will be some extra challenges there. I'm sorry, but I will say that I do feel, sorry is not the word for Don Charles. I would say sympathy. I do sympathise for what he has to deal with. Because you, the trainer, don't have complete control. And if you don't have complete control, then things are not shaped the way you want them to be shaped. And if they're not shaped the way you want them to be shaped, then imagine what a trainer could do if he's got full control of the fighter. Full control of the fighter. If this is what you can do, and you're in an uphill struggle, and this is what the trainer can do. And here's another thing I do want to talk about while I'm at it on trainers. I think fighters take advantage of trainers. I know that fighters get in the ring and fight, but I truly believe there should be some sort of a law that once a trainer has invested a certain amount of time with you, that trainer needs to have a contract. There needs to be a contract, and that trainer needs to be paid. But they invested the time and their energy in you. They shouldn't have to be asking you for a contract. A contract should be mandatory, right? And then, you know, there needs to be a contract. Contracts need to be put in place for trainers. Not this case where, I'll pay you on a fight by fight basis. What I know as a coach, you couldn't pay me on a match by match basis. That's nonsense. I would say, listen, this is here's 6 fights, or here's 6 matches, or here's 10 matches, here's 6 matches, here's 10 matches. This is the plan for the next 2 years. I'm with you. This is the time I invest in you, because I've been spending time investing in you, taking you to my mind. I'm invested in you to become the best version of yourself, and it won't happen over 1 or 2 games. It might not happen for at least 10 games. In boxing, it might not be to 4 or 5 matches till we start to see the very best of you. So I don't know. I've just got a totally different thought on these things. I've said it before in the chat, but I think it still holds. Caroline is the best development talent wise in the family. She's still getting better. Dubois has reached his peak, potentially already. Johnny Nelson mentioned a clash he had with Dubois' father after the AJ fight. I heard about it. He wanted to congratulate Dubois, but father took Nelson personally and was pumping the room with bad atmosphere. Yep, I did hear about that. But this this toxic atmosphere that's there now, it can't last. It can't last. And Frank Warren won't allow it to last. There's no way Frank Warren will look at this and he will not be best pleased. Not at all. Not at all. Huh? You just fought for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world, and this stuff is coming out now. It's not good. That should never happen again. And I said, the return of their handler is necessary. Where's the fighter? What is the fighter doing? So if you had a handler, there is no way on this God's earth that would have happened. Dubois would have been, he would have already been in the changing rooms, because the handler would have been there to handle bigness. So I think a handler is necessary in boxing. Every top flight fighter should have a handler. I think the handler should potentially the fighter's best interests. Make sure that their finances are in place. So you get these media people that want to think they're handlers. There's a lot of media people out there that think they're doing the fighter good, but they're doing the fighter a lot of damage. You know who you are. You know who I'm talking to, right? You do the fight a lot of damage, because what you do is that you watch these fighters go on these what you call small platforms to build their name up. And once they've built their name up, you don't tell them fighters, oh, you don't need them platforms anymore. But you idiots, what happens when a fighter gets brutally knocked out? Then what happens? You can't repair the damage that's been done. So the fighter's left out there. Nobody wants to talk to them, because what does end up happening? Fighters has torn relationships with a lot of these channels. See, I'm opening up and showing things to you guys now. A lot of idiots out there, like they're just like, and they don't help the fighter. They They give the fighter even what oh, you don't need them now. You don't need to talk to them now. You don't need to engage with them now. Really? Oh no, they'll keep you level headed. You don't need to engage with them now. You're big fish now. You don't need to talk to them. Okay. You don't need them anymore. And I've seen a lot of fighters that go down that route and it never ends up well. Never ends up well. So, yeah. We need handlers. We need handlers because a handler could step in and say, listen, we have a good relationship with these people on YouTube, alternative media. We've got a good relationship with them, and we've got a good relationship with the mainstream media. The mainstream media didn't give a damn about these fighters. The mainstream media didn't give a damn about these fighters, but it's the other alternative media, the YouTubers, the TikTokers, the Instagrammers, these guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, that push their media out there, push these interviews out there. So yeah, and then once they get to a certain level, then these PR people come in and say, "Oh, you don't need them anymore." But without those channels, these fighters wouldn't be there today. To think about it a second, I personally think that all these PR people that are doing it in the background, doing this crap, they need to be shut down. The way you shut them down is, you know what? You don't give them fighters. You don't give them fighters. You steer them away from them. Or you tell the fighters, listen, your best interest is to get somebody who's going to overview your career, that's going to make sure that you keep your relationships intact, because you're going to need them. Because one day you'll lose, and when you do lose, nobody, the mainstream media are not interested. You mainstream media are going to gun you, as they're gunning Daniel Dubois now. So I think I've spoken about a few things tonight, a few topics tonight, but it still comes back to handlers, people who are going to make, first of all, protect you and your best interests. And your best interests are to ensure that you are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually engaged in the battle you have to face, inside the ring and outside the ring. So those are my thoughts on that. It's a bit of a strange one, but one I think that definitely will be revisited for sure. I'd like to know if there are any handlers out there in boxing today. I'd love to talk to them because I'd love to hear their perspective and what their responsibilities are. I'll probably have to go back to Stacey McKinley for that because he would be the best informed. And that would also reduce the amount of unexpected poor performances in the ring. Yeah, because if you've got a handler should be able to tell the investor, well, look, this guy's been training well, and if they don't perform well on night, it could be an off night. That's human nature. But there are situations where a guy is weight trained. Why is a guy weight trained? Because he hasn't trained properly. Why? Or he's trying to pull the weight off in the most unprofessional manner. Whereas if you've got a handler, the handler will report back to the manager, promoter, and say, hey, listen, this guy's not making weight properly. And they will say, okay, fine, he needs to invest in somebody to look after his weight properly. These things matter. We need it. We need it. All right, this has been BWTM Sports Gaming. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, leave your comments as always. I'm out of here. Take care.